Clarity precedes all effort. Consider this carefully before anything else. You do not struggle because life demands too much strength from you. You struggle because your effort is aimed without precision. The mind moves quickly to force when clarity is absent. It tightens, pushes, resists. And yet nothing solid changes. This is not a failure of will. It is a failure of judgment. Events themselves are neutral. They arrive without instruction, without meaning. What disturbs you is not what happens, but the verdict you attach to it. This has always been the Stoic position, and it remains exact. When you believe the problem is outside you, effort becomes frantic. When you believe the problem is inside your judgments, effort becomes disciplined. You may say you lack motivation, resilience, or consistency. But look more closely. In most moments, you do not know precisely what belongs to you and what does not. You try to control outcomes, opinions, timing, recognition. You neglect the one domain that is fully yours, how you judge what appears before you. This confusion creates exhaustion. You apply strength where clarity is required. You push where understanding should lead. No amount of force can substitute for correct judgment. Responsibility cannot be outsourced to circumstances, temperament, or history. If disturbance persists, it is because a judgment has gone unexamined. This is not an invitation to comfort. It is an invitation to accuracy. When clarity returns, effort becomes simpler. Not easier, but properly directed. Notice this carefully, the boundary you keep crossing. Before discussing discipline, ownership must be precise. There is a boundary that governs every attempt at self-mastery. When it is respected, effort compounds. When it is ignored, effort leaks away. This boundary is not abstract. It is immediate and practical. It separates what is yours from what is not. What belongs to you is limited but decisive. Your judgments, your intentions, your choices, your willingness to assent or withhold assent. These are always under your authority. No one can step inside this domain unless you grant permission through unexamined agreement. What does not belong to you is far larger. Events, other people's behavior, outcomes, timing, recognition, the past, the future. These things arrive and depart according to causes that do not consult you. Treating them as if they were yours creates tension without leverage. Most frustration comes from crossing this boundary repeatedly throughout the day. You attempt to manage how others should think. You argue with delays. You rehearse outcomes that have not occurred. None of this requires strength. It requires restraint. The refusal to claim authority where none exists. Consider a simple example. You prepare carefully for a conversation. You speak with clarity. The response is dismissive. At this point, two paths open. One remains within your boundary. You examine your intention and your delivery. You note what can be refined. The other path crosses the boundary. You fixate on how you were received. You replay tone, facial expression, imagined judgments. The second path feels active, but it is powerless. The first is quiet, but effective. Or consider delay. A message goes unanswered. You feel tension rise. The mind fills the silence with explanation. Disrespect, neglect, uncertainty. None of these impressions are facts. The delay itself is neutral. What you control is whether you declare it an insult or leave it undecided. The discomfort does not come from waiting. It comes from assigning meaning too quickly. When this distinction is unclear, discipline is misunderstood. You believe discipline means enduring what you cannot control with clenched resolve. This leads to bitterness. Stoic discipline is different. It means releasing false claims of ownership so that effort is applied only where it has effect. Notice how often language reveals the confusion. I need them to understand. I can't stand when this happens. I should have gotten a different result. Each statement assigns ownership outward. Each creates an obligation the world never agreed to fulfill. This is not a call to passivity. Action still matters. Preparation matters. Communication matters. But action without clarity is wasteful. The Stoic does not withdraw from life. He withdraws false expectations from his actions. Once the boundary is respected, a shift occurs. Energy returns. Not because life becomes cooperative, but because effort is no longer divided. You stop arguing with reality. You stop rehearsing grievances that cannot be enforced. You attend to judgment instead of outcome. This boundary does not shrink your life. It stabilizes it. Within it, responsibility is complete. Outside it, acceptance replaces demand. Strength becomes available only after clarity is restored. This explains where effort is misplaced, but not yet how disturbance takes hold, the moment you give agreement. Now we look at what actually creates disturbance. The boundary of control explains where authority lies, but disturbance does not arise at the boundary itself. It arises at a specific internal moment. A moment so brief it is usually missed. This is the moment the mind agrees with an impression. An impression is automatic. A sound, a delay, a facial expression, a thought. These arrive without effort and without consent. You do not choose them. The Stoics were precise about this. What arrives is not yet a problem. It is only raw data. The problem begins when the mind moves from receiving to declaring, from noticing to concluding, from impression to judgment. This movement is called assent. And assent is optional, even when it feels immediate. Most people collapse these steps into one. Something happens, and meaning seems to appear fully formed. Insult, threat, failure, disrespect. But this is an illusion of speed. The mind is fast, not infallible. Between what appears and what you decide it means, there is a gap. That gap is small, but it is sufficient. It is the entire location of freedom. Consider criticism. Someone comments on your work. The words arrive. That is the impression. Almost instantly, the mind supplies a verdict: they are undermining me. Or, I am being judged. The emotional response follows as if compelled. But notice the sequence. The feeling does not come from the words. It comes from the agreement that the words are an attack or a verdict on your worth. Or consider misunderstanding. A message is read differently than intended. Tension appears. The impression is ambiguity. The judgment is certainty about negative intent. Once that judgment is accepted, the body reacts. Defensiveness, irritation, withdrawal. The disturbance feels justified because the judgment has gone unnoticed. Stoic discipline does not aim to stop impressions. That would be impossible. Nor does it aim to suppress feeling. Feeling follows judgment naturally. The aim is narrower and more exact. To notice the point of assent and to pause there. This pause is not dramatic. It does not require withdrawal or silence. Often one breath is enough. Not to calm yourself, but to delay agreement. To say, internally, this is an impression. I have not yet decided what it means. This is where clarity replaces force. Without the pause, effort turns into reaction. With the pause, effort becomes choice. You may still act. You may still speak firmly. But action proceeds from judgment that has been examined, not swallowed whole. It is important to be precise here. Stoicism does not deny emotion. It denies the belief that emotion proves correctness. Anger may arise. Fear may arise. These are signals, not commands. They indicate that a judgment has been made, not that it must be obeyed. Many people believe they lack discipline because they feel too much. This is another confusion. Feeling is not failure. Unexamined assent is. The work is not to eliminate reaction, but to relocate authority back to reason. When you miss this moment, disturbance seems inevitable. When you catch it, Disturbance becomes optional. Not always avoidable, but always traceable. You can say, "I agreed too quickly." This restores responsibility without blame. Understanding this mechanism is not enough. Insight alone does not create discipline, training attention instead of forcing will. This is where most people misunderstand discipline. Discipline is commonly imagined as force applied inward. You push yourself. You override reluctance. You endure resistance. For short periods, this can work. But it is unstable. Force exhausts itself. When pressure increases, the structure collapses. Stoic discipline is not built this way. It does not rely on constant exertion. It relies on training attention so that correct judgment becomes habitual. The goal is not to overpower impulses, but to see them clearly before they command assent. Willpower is episodic. It appears and disappears depending on fatigue, mood, and circumstance. Training is cumulative. It shapes how the mind meets impressions before effort is even required. This is why clarity matters more than intensity. Ascesis, the Stoic term for discipline, means practice. Not punishment. Not deprivation. Practice is repetition under manageable conditions. You do not wait for crisis to train. You train so that crisis does not determine your response. Consider how force fails. You decide to remain calm. An unexpected obstacle appears. The plan breaks. The reaction feels immediate and uncontrollable. The problem was never the obstacle. The problem was that the mind had not been trained to pause before judging disruption as unacceptable. Training begins earlier and smaller. It happens when stakes are low. When irritation is mild. When inconvenience is ordinary. This is deliberate. You are not testing strength. You are educating attention. The Stoic does not aim to feel nothing. That is neither possible nor desirable. The aim is to choose deliberately which impressions receive assent. Emotion may still arise. The difference is that emotion no longer dictates action automatically. Repetition creates this shift. Each time you notice an impression and delay agreement, even briefly, you reinforce the correct sequence. Impression first. Judgment second. Action last. Over time, this order becomes familiar. The mind stops rushing ahead. This is why discipline cannot be improvised. Under pressure, the mind returns to its habits. If the habit is confusion, reaction follows. If the habit is clarity, response follows. Training determines which appears. Notice how this reframes effort. You are no longer fighting yourself. You are guiding attention. When attention is trained, effort becomes quieter. Decisions feel simpler, not because options disappear, but because judgment is steadier. This also explains why many disciplined-looking lives are inwardly chaotic. External order does not guarantee internal clarity. Schedules, rules, and routines help only if they support correct judgment. Otherwise, they become rigid substitutes for understanding. Stoic discipline is patient. It does not demand immediate mastery. It demands consistency. The same correction, applied repeatedly, without drama. You notice the impression. You delay assent. You choose deliberately. That is the entire practice. Training remains abstract unless it appears in daily life, where practice enters ordinary moments. This practice is proven in ordinary moments. Philosophy shows its value not in rare decisions, but in how the mind handles what seems insignificant. Small frictions. Minor delays. Casual remarks. This is where training either exists or does not. If clarity fails here, it will not appear under pressure. Stoic practice is simple in structure and demanding in consistency. It does not require withdrawal from life. It requires attention within it. 3 practices anchor this attention, and each operates before disturbance hardens into reaction. The first is anticipating impressions accurately. This is not pessimism. It is precision. You begin the day knowing that interruption, disagreement, and delay are likely, not as threats, but as features. When the mind expects smooth passage, any friction feels like injustice. When the mind expects variance, friction appears as confirmation, not insult. This anticipation is quiet. You do not rehearse scenarios emotionally. You acknowledge facts rationally. Today, plans may be interrupted. People may misunderstand. Timing may slip. None of this removes your authority over judgment. Expecting this does not burden the day. It stabilizes it. The second practice is pausing before assent. This is the central discipline. The pause need not be long. Often one breath is sufficient. Not to calm emotion, but to interrupt certainty. You notice the impression and delay agreement just long enough to say, I have not yet decided what this means. This pause reclaims the sequence. Impression first. Judgment second. Action last. Without it, reaction fills the gap. With it, choice reappears. You may still decide firmly. You may still act quickly. But speed now follows clarity, not impulse. This practice will be missed often. That is expected. The goal is not perfection. The goal is recognition. Each time you notice that assent came too quickly, you strengthen the next pause. Training accumulates invisibly. The third practice occurs at the end of the day. Evening review. This is not confession. It is examination. You revisit moments where disturbance arose. Not to condemn or praise, but to understand. Where did you cross the boundary of control? Where did you assent too quickly? Where did you respond with clarity? Guilt has no role here. Guilt is itself an unexamined judgment. It declares failure without extracting instruction. Praise is equally unnecessary. It inflates identity rather than refining judgment. The review is factual. This happened. I agreed too fast. Next time, I will pause earlier. This practice closes the day without residue. You do not carry forward imagined debts to yourself. You carry forward information. That is sufficient. What matters most is that these practices remain small. They do not demand heroic effort. They demand repetition. The same correction applied again and again, in moments that do not announce their importance. Discipline fails when it is reserved for extremes. It succeeds when it governs the ordinary. You do not need a different life to practice this. You need a different relationship to impressions. When this becomes consistent, something shifts. The world does not change. Pressure does not disappear. But your position within events stabilizes. You stop chasing control where it does not exist. You stop neglecting it where it does. From practice, sovereignty emerges, what freedom looks like without comfort. Freedom is often misunderstood. It is commonly imagined as ease. Fewer obstacles. More agreement. Better outcomes. When life aligns with preference, people say they feel free. When it resists, they say freedom has been taken. This definition is fragile. It depends entirely on conditions that do not belong to you. Stoic freedom is different. It does not promise comfort. It promises authority. Authority over judgment. Authority over assent. Authority over how impressions are received and acted upon. This freedom does not expand outward. It consolidates inward. When this distinction is missed, people pursue freedom by rearranging circumstances. New environments. New roles. New relationships. Temporary relief follows, then the same disturbance returns. The pattern repeats because the source was never addressed. The same judgments travel with you. Inner freedom begins when responsibility is no longer negotiated. You stop waiting for the world to cooperate before you regain composure. You stop treating external difficulty as a justification for internal disorder. You accept that life will remain variable. You decide that judgment will not. This does not make life easier. In some ways, it makes it more demanding. You can no longer blame confusion on circumstances. You can no longer outsource reaction to pressure. The work is quieter and more exact. Each moment asks the same question: what is this to me, really? Freedom here is maintenance, not achievement. It does not arrive and remain permanently. It must be exercised repeatedly. Each impression presents a choice. Each choice either preserves authority or hands it away. No external success secures this. No failure destroys it. Only judgment alters its presence. Consider how this changes the experience of difficulty. When plans fail, you do not say, "I am trapped." You say, "This is an obstacle. My judgment remains." When criticized, you do not say, "My worth is threatened." You say, "An opinion has been expressed. I will examine it." The event remains. The disturbance does not have to. This freedom does not remove emotion. It reorders it. Emotion follows judgment, but judgment is no longer automatic. You may feel frustration, but it does not govern action. You may feel fear, but it does not dictate conclusion. Emotion becomes information, not command. Comfort seeks the absence of friction. Freedom tolerates friction without surrendering authority. Comfort is dependent. Freedom is self-contained. Comfort must be protected. Freedom must be practiced. This is why Stoic freedom survives loss, delay, and opposition. Not because these are pleasant, but because they do not penetrate the only domain that matters. You still act. You still care. But caring no longer means submitting judgment to outcome. Nothing outside you must change for this to begin. That is not an exaggeration. It is a technical statement. The moment you stop confusing external conditions with internal authority, freedom is already present in its proper form. This does not excuse error. You will misjudge. You will assent too quickly. You will react. Freedom does not require perfection. It requires recognition and correction. Each return to clarity restores what was briefly relinquished. When understood this way, freedom is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It is felt as steadiness, as the absence of inner argument, as the ability to meet difficulty without internal collapse. The principle is complete, keeping authority where it belongs. Nothing here requires escalation. You began with the belief that strength was missing. That belief was understandable, but inaccurate. What was missing was clarity about where authority resides. Once that is seen, effort no longer scatters itself across what cannot be governed. It returns to what is yours. Events remain unchanged. People remain inconsistent. Outcomes remain uncertain. This was never the problem. The problem was the habit of assigning judgment outward and then wondering why inner order collapsed. Responsibility was diluted. Attention was misdirected. Stoic discipline corrects this without comfort or blame. It states, plainly, that judgment is yours. Assent is yours. Choice is yours. Nothing else needs to be controlled for stability to begin. This is not optimism. It is precision. You will not apply this flawlessly. You will agree too quickly. You will react. That does not invalidate the principle. It confirms the need for practice. Each recognition restores authority. Each correction strengthens clarity. Perfection was never required. Ownership is. The work does not demand a different personality, a quieter world, or more favorable conditions. It demands that you stop negotiating responsibility away when pressure appears. When disturbance arises, you look inward, not to excuse, but to locate the judgment that permitted it. This is the discipline Epictetus insisted on. Not withdrawal from life, but exact participation in it. You act. You engage. You accept outcomes without surrendering inner command. Strength becomes unnecessary where clarity is present. Nothing external can complete this for you. Nothing external can take it away. The only losses that matter occur when judgment is abandoned without notice. The only victories that matter occur when it is reclaimed. The work is simple. It is not easy. And it is yours. Return to what is yours.